The galaxy had always been a place where strength decided survival, where the toughest, the smartest, and the fastest thrived, while the weak disappeared without a trace. Among the endless species that roamed the stars, the mercenary guilds held a special place, groups of fearless fighters who would take any contract, face any danger, and win battles that others thought impossible. For centuries, they had moved between wars like shadows, changing the course of empires with the flick of a blade or the blast of a plasma rifle. No employer ever frightened them. No enemy ever made them hesitate. But everything started to change when the humans arrived. At first, no one noticed them. They were just another new species, barely crawling out of their small corner of the galaxy, setting up fragile colonies and trading with bigger civilizations. The mercenaries watched with casual disinterest, thinking the humans would either adapt or vanish, as so many others had before them. But then the humans started offering contracts, small ones at first, simple protection jobs, easy raids, or local disputes. The guilds accepted eagerly. Humans paid well and asked for little, and for a while it seemed like just another profitable venture. Yet, strange reports began to surface, whispers among the veterans, stories too ridiculous to believe. Crews assigned to human missions returning battered and broken, not because of enemy forces, but because of the humans themselves. Not through betrayal. No, it was something far worse, something no one could understand. The humans didn't act like normal employers. They didn't retreat when overwhelmed. They didn't panic when plans fell apart. Instead, they adapted instantly, turning defeats into traps, making every small loss into a bigger win. Mercenaries used to predictable chaos found themselves facing something they had never prepared for: an enemy hidden within an ally. Some crews came back with heavy losses, others with none at all, and a few simply never returned. The mercenary guilds dismissed these incidents at first, blaming incompetence, bad luck, or unforeseen dangers. After all, the galaxy was full of surprises. But deep inside, a quiet unease began to grow, spreading like a shadow across the halls of even the most battle-hardened veterans. Then came the turning point, a contract so simple that no one thought twice before accepting. A convoy escort through a neutral zone, barely armed, with a promise of easy money. 4 mercenary groups signed up. They vanished. Not a single distress signal, not a scrap of debris, not a word. Their disappearance sent shockwaves through the guilds. Investigations were launched, theories spun, but no one could explain it. In hushed meetings and encrypted messages, a new possibility took root. Maybe the humans were not what they seemed. Maybe they were something far more dangerous. Leaders of the top guilds gathered in secret. They reviewed mission logs, survivor testimonies, and battlefield records involving humans. The pattern became clear. Every time humans were involved, the unexpected happened. They fought when surrender was logical. They won battles they should have lost. They turned every weakness into a weapon. It wasn't just that humans were brave. It wasn't just that they were tough. It was something deeper, something almost unnatural. They didn't know how to give up. And worse, they learned. Every time they were defeated, they came back stronger, faster, smarter. No other species reacted to failure like this. Most civilizations collapsed under pressure. Most soldiers cracked when faced with defeat. Humans evolved. They treated war like breathing natural, instinctive, and relentless. Word spread quietly across the mercenary world. Commanders started warning their crews to think twice before taking human contracts. Prices for human missions skyrocketed, but even greed could not erase the growing fear. A few reckless groups tried their luck again. They did not return. In the dark corners of space stations and mercenary hubs, a new rule was whispered: never trust a simple human job. Never mistake their smiles for weakness. Never believe that a human problem was easy. The humans themselves seemed oblivious to the storm they had stirred. They continued their work, hiring fewer mercenaries as they grew stronger. Some suspected that humans knew exactly what they were doing, that they were studying every failure, every betrayal, every attack, and turning it into a lesson. If that was true, then it meant something terrifying. The humans were not just surviving, they were preparing. Preparing for something bigger, something no mercenary guild could hope to stop. The realization sank in slowly but deeply. The galaxy's fiercest warriors, the mercenary kings of war, had found a new player in the market. And this player was not just better at fighting. They were better at surviving, better at learning, better at winning. In the face of such a force, the mercenaries did the only thing they had never done before. They hesitated. For the first time in centuries, they looked at a contract, saw the name of the employer, and felt a chill run down their spines. Humans. Simple, fragile humans. And yet, they were the ones who turned hunters into prey, conquerors into cowards, and warriors into ghosts. The market had changed forever. A new player had entered. And the galaxy would never be the same again. After the whispers and warnings spread through the mercenary guilds, there were still a few who did not believe. Some thought the fear of humans was exaggerated, a result of bad luck or the cowardice of weaker crews. Among these doubters were the elite squads, proud of their flawless records, unwilling to accept that a newly emerged species could challenge their long-standing dominance. Driven by arrogance and the promise of high payments, they decided to prove everyone wrong. The contracts were simple enough: strike missions, sabotage runs, and high-risk escorts offered by human corporations and governments. The first squad, known as the Iron Fangs, accepted a mission to escort a convoy of human settlers across a supposedly neutral territory. It should have been routine, a simple show of force to deter raiders. But the moment they entered the sector, strange things began to happen. Communications were scrambled by unknown interference, navigation systems glitched with false coordinates, and unidentified signals appeared on their radars. Before they could react properly, the convoy itself, those supposed civilians, unleashed a well-coordinated ambush. The Iron Fangs fought back fiercely, but they were not prepared for the sheer tactical intelligence of their supposed clients. Every move they made was predicted, every counterattack blocked. One by one, they were cut off and overwhelmed. Days later, only a few shattered remnants of their squad limped back to base, too ashamed to speak of what had truly happened. They were not defeated by a stronger army, but by the terrifying adaptability of their employers. Still, some guilds refused to accept reality. A second squad, the Black Talons, accepted a mission to disable a small human research facility on a remote world. They planned carefully, studying layouts and planning infiltration routes. But when they reached the facility, they found it abandoned. At least that's what it seemed. As they moved deeper inside, they triggered silent alarms, appearing and disappearing without sound, always one step ahead. Their final transmission was filled with panic and confusion, voices shouting about invisible enemies and walls closing in. After that, only silence. No bodies were recovered. No explanations given. The third squad, the Solar Blades, known for their brutal strength and unmatched firepower, took on a direct assault mission against a human military outpost. Confident in their superior technology and numbers, they charged in without caution, expecting a swift and bloody victory. Instead, they found themselves facing a defense so perfectly layered, so intricately planned, that every advantage they thought they had was turned against them. Narrow valleys became killing zones, open plains became traps, and even the weather seemed to work against them, with sudden storms disrupting their heavy artillery. The humans used guerrilla tactics with terrifying precision, forcing the mercenaries into bottlenecks and ambushes. Their losses mounted rapidly. Some mercenaries tried to surrender, but the humans did not come to capture. They came to end the threat completely. In less than 3 days, the Solar Blades were wiped out, their banners left as warnings at the edges of human territory. No mercenary guild had ever witnessed such complete and calculated destruction by what they had once considered a minor species. Fear turned into cold respect. The surviving mercenaries who managed to escape these missions returned broken in spirit. They spoke in low, haunted voices about human fighters who adapted to every tactic, soldiers who fought with a fire and resilience that machines and training could not replicate. They described humans who laughed in the face of danger, who smiled even when outnumbered, who refused to fall even after taking injuries that would have killed others. It became clear that humans did not view conflict the same way other species did. For them, it was not just a necessity, it was part of who they were, a force as natural as breathing. Their minds adapted as quickly as their bodies, learning, evolving, predicting every move of their opponents. They could not be outsmarted for long. They could not be outlasted without consequence. The mercenary guilds tried to understand it, to categorize it, to find a weakness. But the truth was simpler and far more terrifying. Humans grew stronger through failure. Every defeat they experienced was merely a lesson, every loss a stepping stone to a greater victory. Unlike other species that broke under pressure, humans hardened. Like tempered steel, they became sharper, deadlier with each trial. As the number of missing squads rose, the guilds finally accepted what many had refused to believe. No mission involving humans was simple. No assignment was without hidden dangers. There was no such thing as an easy win against them. Humans played the long game. They lured enemies in with promises of easy credits and simple objectives, only to turn the tables in ways that no mercenary commander could predict. The humans did not just fight battles. They fought minds, wearing down their enemies mentally and physically until fear itself did the job for them. Across the galaxy, mercenary halls, once filled with bravado and reckless laughter, grew quieter. New contracts involving humans were discussed with serious faces and tense voices. Commanders issued warnings. Guild leaders whispered of the new danger rising among the stars. Some even considered outright bans on human-related missions, but pride and greed held them back for a time. However, the lessons from the last few missions were not easily forgotten. The galaxy's most feared warriors had been outmatched, not by strength alone, but by the unbreakable spirit and ruthless intelligence of humanity. And deep down, every mercenary who survived knew one terrifying truth. If humans could grow this powerful in such a short time, what would they become in the years to come? Would there be any force left that could stand against them? The thought lingered like a shadow over every decision, every future contract. The mercenary guilds had faced many enemies, many wars, many nightmares. But never before had they faced a nightmare that smiled, adapted, and came back stronger every single time. And now, the mercenaries knew, in the cold, unforgiving darkness of space, the most dangerous enemy was the one who refused to die. In the hidden corners of the galaxy, far from the crowded trade routes and the guarded colonies, there existed worlds untouched by the heavy boots of empires and mercenaries. It was on one such forgotten world that an old exploration vessel, the Sparrow's Eye, stumbled upon something that would shake the foundations of the known universe. Captain Ilara Vance, a seasoned scavenger with little patience for politics, had only agreed to land on them. Of the unknown drove her to take the risk. The surface was barren, a dead world covered in gray dust and jagged rock formations that stretched like claws into a lifeless sky. Yet the signal led them to a massive underground structure, hidden beneath a collapsed mountain. Sensors could not penetrate the dense rock, and every scan returned conflicting results, sometimes showing signs of life, sometimes nothing at all. Against the advice of her crew, Ilara ordered a team to descend. What they found was beyond anything they had prepared for. The structure was ancient, built with metals and technologies that none of them could identify. Strange symbols, worn by time but still faintly glowing, lined the walls. As they ventured deeper, it became clear that this place had not been abandoned. It had been buried on purpose, sealed away from the universe like a secret too dangerous to share. At the heart of the facility, they found it, a chamber filled with towering pillars that hummed with an energy unlike any they had encountered. In the center stood a pod, transparent and humming softly, holding what looked like a human or something very close to one. But this being was different. Its body was larger, denser, with muscles woven like living steel. Its skin shimmered faintly under the strange light, and its closed eyes moved rapidly as if dreaming deep, endless dreams. It was alive, but in some form of stasis. Ilara's instincts screamed at her to leave, to reseal the chamber and forget she ever found it. But curiosity and ambition pushed her forward. They took scans, collected data, and sent samples back to the ship. In the hours that followed, systems across the Sparrow's Eye began to fail. First, the communications array went dark. Then the power fluctuations began, lights flickering like nervous eyes in the dark. Crew members reported strange sighting shadows that moved without light, whispers that echoed through the empty corridors. Fear began to grip them, a tight, invisible hand squeezing harder with each passing moment. They tried to lift off, but the engines refused to respond, locked by an unknown override. Trapped and isolated, they realized that awakening the ancient being had triggered defenses beyond their understanding. But the real horror came when the pod itself began to crack. Small fractures spider-webbed across the surface, glowing bright as the strange energy within leaked into the air. With a low, deafening hum, the pod finally shattered, and the creature inside took its first breath in countless millennia. The lights died completely, plunging the base into darkness broken only by the pulse of the strange energy. In the blackness, something moved fast, silent. One by one, crew members vanished, their screams cut short, leaving only the sickening sound of something wet dragging across the floor. Alara, armed with nothing but a plasma pistol and a flickering emergency light, stumbled through the twisting halls, trying to reach the surface. But the structure itself seemed to warp around her, corridors twisting in impossible ways, doors vanishing, walls closing in. It was as if the building was alive and determined to trap her. She realized too late that this place had not been built to contain the creature. It had been built by the creature. The being was not some ancient relic of a forgotten race. It was the architect of its prison, and now that it was free, it intended to reshape the galaxy in its image. Driven by a mind far older and sharper than hers, it played with her, guiding her steps like a spider guiding a trapped fly. Desperation gave her strength. Alara found the main reactor room and, with trembling hands, initiated the overload sequence. She knew it would destroy the facility and likely herself, but it was the only way to stop whatever had been unleashed. As alarms blared and the walls shook, she caught a final glimpse of the creature, tall, terrible, and yet strangely human, watching her with eyes that held stars within them. In that moment, she understood the true scale of her mistake. This was not just an ancient being, it was a weapon, a living weapon crafted in humanity's forgotten past, hidden away to prevent a future of endless war. The overload detonated in a blinding flash, collapsing the mountain above and burying the facility once more. From orbit, the Sparrow's eye, still powerless, recorded the explosion before drifting silently into the dark, lost forever. Yet, in the shattered ruins below, something stirred. A hand, bloodied but unbroken, pushed through the rubble. The creature had survived. Weakened, perhaps, but very much alive. And now it had tasted freedom. Word of the disaster eventually spread, carried by frightened traders and broken transmissions intercepted by listening stations. Already been feared for its resilience, its creativity, its stubborn refusal to die. But now, something far older and even more dangerous walked among the stars, something born from humanity, but evolved beyond its wildest dreams. The galaxy held its breath, waiting for the next move of the being who had slept for an eternity and now walked with purpose once more. No, across the great trade stations and bustling colonies of the galaxy, something strange began to happen, something so silent yet so powerful that it shook the powerful empires and massive corporations to their core without a single shot being fired. It started on a small mining station called Valor Prime, where human workers famous for their resilience, their stubbornness, and their unmatched ability to survive the harshest conditions suddenly refused to load the cargo ships. At first, no one noticed, thinking it was a minor glitch or an isolated protest. But as hours turned into days and days into weeks, a pattern emerged wherever humans worked. Production slowed, shipments delayed, and promises broken. They did not riot, they did not attack, they simply stopped participating. No signs, no loud protests, no angry demands, just a cold collective withdrawal from the system that had long taken them for granted. Commanders, merchants, and diplomats scrambled to understand, sending emissaries to negotiate, offering better pay, safer conditions, and promises they never intended to keep, but the humans did not even answer. They stood together, arms crossed, eyes calm, their silence heavier than 1,000 speeches. News of the boycott spread quickly, carried by frightened traders and whispered in the golden halls of the high councils. Alien leaders who had once thought of humans as useful tools or dangerous allies now realized the deeper truth: humanity's power had never been in its weapons or its technology. It had been in their stubborn unity, their silent understanding that together they could break empires without firing a single bullet. Without human labor, the great engines of trade began to slow. The towering construction projects paused mid-air. The exploration fleets sat rusting in dry docks. The galaxy's largest companies saw their profits crumble, their shareholders panic, and their stock markets crash. Military commanders who had relied on human soldiers for dirty wars and risky missions found their battalions empty, their enemies emboldened. And all through it, the humans said nothing, made no speeches, and gave no warnings. It was a lesson in silence, and it was terrifying. Attempts to replace the humans with machines or other species failed miserably. The humans had built systems so complex that only they truly understood how to keep them running. Automated cargo loaders broke down, mining bots jammed underground, and replacement crews from other species lacked the strange human instinct to fix problems that had no clear solutions. Entire cities flickered and died simply because there was no human there to patch the power lines or restart the engines. Desperation gripped the elites of the galaxy, and they gathered in secret councils to discuss solutions. Some suggested threats, others bribery, and the most foolish suggested force. But the wiser ones knew you could not threaten those who had already walked away. You could not buy loyalty from those who had decided your gold was worthless. And you could not scare a people who had faced extinction on their own homeworld and still survive. Meanwhile, among the humans, there was no single leader giving orders, no single voice guiding the boycott. It was as if they had all reached the same conclusion at the same time, that they were no longer willing to be used, abused, and discarded. It was a quiet revolution, and it was unstoppable because it lived not in banners and battles, but in hearts and minds. Some planets tried to create human substitutes by forcing other species to mimic their ways, but the results were disastrous. Machines built by humans began to fail in unexpected ways, as if rejecting their new masters. Complex supply chains collapsed, alliances crumbled, and star systems once ruled with an iron grip became wild and lawless. And still, humanity waited, watching, saying nothing. On the diplomatic front, desperate envoys tried to meet with human communities, offering grand gestures and endless apologies, but they found themselves standing in empty halls or facing closed doors. In one famous event, the Grand Emissary of the Luthic Empire traveled across 5-star systems to beg for negotiation, only to find a single piece of paper pinned to the council chamber door: "Respect is earned, not demanded." The message, simple and cold, spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Across the stars, societies that had once thought themselves untouchable realized how fragile their power truly was without the silent strength of humanity to prop it up. Pirates grew bold, borders crumbled, and planets that had not seen war in centuries found themselves vulnerable, unable to muster the defenses they needed. And through it all, the humans continued their silent boycott, not with anger, but with a chilling calm that frightened even the bravest generals. It became clear to everyone that humanity had not just walked away from jobs or contracts, they had walked away from trust, from loyalty, from the unspoken bonds that had once tied the galaxy together. It was not just an economic crisis, it was a spiritual one. The galaxy, for all its advanced technology and ancient wisdom, realized it had forgotten the most important lesson: that no empire, no matter how grand, could survive without the trust of those who built it. As months turned into a year, a change began to take shape. Some of the wiser leaders, the ones who truly understood what was at stake, began to change their ways. They passed laws protecting workers, honored old agreements, and punished the corrupt who had once thought themselves above the law. Small signs of respect appeared: free education, fair treatment, true partnerships instead of exploitation. Slowly, cautiously, in scattered places, humans began to return. Not all at once, and not everywhere, but enough to give hope. Not because they were bought or ordered, but because they chose to, because they saw signs of real change. The galaxy, humbled and scarred, would never be the same. The silent boycott had proven that humanity's strength was never just in fighting. It was in choosing when not to fight, in refusing to be part of systems that disrespected them, in showing the galaxy that the greatest power of all was the power to simply walk away. And somewhere in the vastness of space, as new alliances were forged and old empires trembled, a small human child listened to the stories of the silent boycott and understood that real strength did not need to shout, threaten, or destroy. Sometimes, real strength simply needed to say no and mean it. For centuries, the stars had been ruled by the old powers, the proud empires, the ancient alliances, the wealthy corporations that built cities on moons and forged treaties between planets. But in one quiet, terrifying season, something new crept across the galaxy, something that none of the rulers understood and none of the armies could fight. It started with small things first: patrol ships that vanished without a trace, trade caravans that sent no distress signals before disappearing into the dark void, colonies where the lights went out and were never turned back on. At first, the old powers believed it was rebellion, or pirates, or perhaps even technical failures, but as the list of missing grew longer, and the areas of silence widened like dark stains across the star charts, a new fear took root in their hearts, a fear deeper than war, deeper than famine, deeper than any disaster they had ever faced before, because it was a fear of the unknown. The names of the missing ships began to echo like ghost stories on every station: the Resolute, gone without a whisper; the Silver Crown, last seen near the mining rings of Bastov; the Harbinger, whose final log ended mid-sentence, mid-scream. Investigators were sent, brave men and women with the best technology, but they too disappeared, and with them went all answers. Leaders across the galaxy called emergency councils, throwing blame at each other, raising their defenses, preparing for invasions that never came. Because how could you fight an enemy you could not see, hear, or understand? Ships traveled in massive convoys now, terrified to cross the void alone, yet even among great fleets, ships were plucked away as if by an invisible hand. Some said it was a new alien race, one that had no interest in negotiation, only extermination. Others whispered that it was an ancient weapon, lost and now awakened. Some even believed it was the universe itself, tired of their arrogance, reaching out to erase them. Fear grew so thick that it choked the brave and froze the bold. Trade collapsed, military patrols stopped venturing beyond safe zones, and once vibrant colonies locked themselves behind shields, refusing to answer even friendly calls. In this growing darkness, humanity, once considered reckless and dangerous, now seemed like a mystery themselves. For while other species cowered or fought shadows, the humans acted differently. They moved quietly, calmly, but with purpose. Their ships changed routes without explanation, their settlements fortified themselves in strange, unexpected ways, and their leaders spoke less and listened more. It was as if they recognized the shape of the fear, understood it in a way the others did not, and that knowledge made them both respected and deeply feared. Rumors spread that the humans knew what was happening, that they had seen something during their ancient wars on Earth, something that could not be fought with armies or defeated with technology. No one could confirm these rumors, of course, but the silence of the humans only made the rumors more powerful. In the isolated halls of power, some desperate rulers attempted to recruit human mercenaries for protection, offering fortunes and territories, but most humans politely declined, giving no reasons. A few groups who accepted these contracts disappeared alongside their employers, fueling even greater dread. Fear mutated into paranoia. Neighbors distrusted neighbors, alliances crumbled into suspicion, and the stars, once filled with the busy hum of trade and conversation, fell eerily quiet. On many planets, leaders tried to create displays of strength, massive fleets, grand military parades, but their people were not fooled. Strength against an enemy you could not find was a lie, and everyone knew it. The fear was not just of death, it was of being helpless, of being erased without warning, without cause, without even the chance to fight back. In the shadows of this fear, a new kind of leader rose among humanity: not generals, not politicians, but survivors, men and women who had seen the worst the universe could offer and had lived to tell about it. They taught the old lessons again: how to survive without technology, how to hide, how to endure. Communities that followed their ways had a better chance. Those who clung to the old systems were often the first to vanish. Stories began to emerge from the fringes of the silent zones, stories carried by broken ships and ragged survivors. They spoke of strange shadows moving through the stars, of whispers that crept into ships' communication lines, of cold, sharp moments when reality itself seemed to bend and break. No one could agree on what it was. Some saw black ships the size of continents, others spoke of living darkness, and some heard voices calling them into the void, but all agreed that it was beyond their understanding and that it did not negotiate. It did not pause, and it did not forgive. As the fear tightened its grip, more and more colonies abandoned the outer edges, pulling back toward the core worlds, leaving entire sectors to silence and darkness. Maps of the galaxy changed almost overnight. Explorers stopped exploring, traders stopped trading, and adventurers who once sought fame now sought only safe shelter. Across it all, humanity moved like silent watchers, their old boldness tempered into something sharper, colder, and far more dangerous. They built hidden stations, moved in small, hard-to-track groups, and when they spoke, it was with the heavy knowledge of those who had survived the impossible before. A few alien species, desperate for survival, humbled themselves and asked for human guidance. Those who truly listened, who were willing to shed pride and learn, were accepted into small, hidden communities that stood a better chance of surviving. Those who tried to bargain or threaten were left to their fate. In time, a terrifying new reality settled over the galaxy. Survival did not depend on wealth, technology, or power. It depended on understanding the fear, respecting it, and adapting to it. And slowly, painfully, the old rulers began to fade, replaced by those who understood that to live under the new fear was not to conquer, but to endure. Across the stars, the new maps showed fewer cities, fewer empires, fewer armies, but hidden among the ruins and shadows. Small, resilient communities, human-led or human-taught, began to thrive in their own quiet way. They did not seek to rebuild the old galaxy. They sought to survive the new one, knowing that sometimes the greatest strength was not in fighting the darkness, but in learning to live within it without losing yourself. In the end, a new fear ruled the stars, but within that fear, humanity found a new kind of freedom, a freedom born not of victory, but of survival, of knowing that even when the old powers fell and the old maps burned, there would always be those who remembered how to endure, how to adapt, and how to quietly, stubbornly live on.